Ivy Valentine subscribes to Mark Yoon, so should you. Enjoy your treat!
Now more than ever, it's time for our souls to actually burn. So you guys know that I talk about SoulCalibur a lot on my channel. A lot of people have actually labeled me a SoulCalibur-centric channel, which I'm fine with. It's one of my favorite fighting game series, if not my favorite fighting game series of the major franchises. I do talk about other stuff as well, and if you're a long-time subscriber to this channel, you know that. But what I want to talk to you about today is that it's coming up on the time. It's up on the eve of where we are supposed to be letting our souls burn the brightest when it comes to SoulCalibur. So we are always expecting an announcement trailer sometime in 2024, right? Tekken is coming out, and I don't think that they want to take away any kind of popularity that SoulCalibur could garner in its shadow, because when it comes to Tekken versus SoulCalibur, even though they're both produced by Bandai Namco and they're developed by different teams, they collaborate a lot together. But Tekken tends to overshadow SoulCalibur, especially recently. It wasn't always the case, and it hasn't been that far in the past where they were pretty much almost even. I say almost even, but there's still a discrepancy of 500,000 to maybe 1 million copies. But so that's not really super here or there when you see SoulCalibur is reaching its maximum at 2.5 million or something like that, and then Tekken is usually around 3 to 4 million copies, as opposed to the Tekken Tag series, which usually sells around the same as SoulCalibur. But with that being said, the reason that I say we need to garner as much hope now as possible is because this is the time that not only are the developers looking to start marketing the game once we get an announcement trailer, which should be hopefully soon. Tekken does drop, like I said, in the end of January, so I'm expecting it probably around maybe March to April-ish, just some kind of an announcement, and then probably for holiday 2025. Or holiday 2024 rather, possibly 2025. It actually may be more likely to 2025, but I think that if we are coming together right now as a community to try to constantly post about SoulCalibur, whether it be on Reddit or Instagram or X, Twitter, whatever, and just constantly not bombarding Bandai Namco, but just tagging them in our SoulCalibur posts and liking each other's SoulCalibur posts and sharing each other's SoulCalibur posts. That way they can see and kind of feel invigorated that this is not going to be a losing battle with fans, that we are still here, we're still ready, we're still waiting, and as patient as our community can be as opposed to other communities, that we haven't dissipated, we're just still here waiting patiently for the next entry in the SoulCalibur series. I talk all the time about the lore when it comes to SoulCalibur because I think that's the most interesting aspect of it, and it definitely, I think, in my opinion, separates it from the rest. There's a lot of fighting games out there, but not many of them focus on story or narrative. SoulCalibur's narrative hasn't always been the greatest. It's been a mess in the past because of the different development teams that have backed it up, always under the moniker of Project Soul, but they've had different team leads, different marketing managers, they've had different multi-executive developers, they've had different everything, directors, producers, executive producers, they've literally just constantly changed and swapped in, and whenever they're not working on one of their projects, they're usually helping somebody from the Tekken team, or somebody from the Tekken team is over helping us. That's why you can see Harada was producing SoulCalibur 5, and there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes when it came to that. But we are out of dire straits right now, and I don't want to see something happen like what happened with Naruto Storm Connections. So with Naruto Storm Connections, I made videos on it, everybody else made videos on it. People were expecting this to be a Storm 5, and myself and other people were saying from the jump that this is not Storm 5, this is not even going to be close to a Storm 5, this is going to be closer to Generations or Revolution. This is a side game that they usually do in between to test new mechanics to see if people like the mechanics or not, so they can move them forward into the next game. A good example of this would be the 2 jutsus per character that we just talked about. So we just talked about in the last video, every character now, instead of getting your tilt or getting your chakra extension, they actually get a second jutsu, and that might be something that they bring over into Storm 5. creating a team like the Kata that are actually going to be in Storm Connections, but they have no story, they have no place in the game, there's no reason for them to be there outside of being like new characters. It's definitely going to be them setting up Storm 5, which will probably get in like a year or so after this game. The problem being is that when we set our expectations to that level, a lot of people now are crapping on the game like it's like the worst thing ever. It might not be my favorite Storm game. I think it's pretty similar to Generations in content, except for the fact that maybe Generations did things a little bit better, like with the fully animated cutscenes and whatnot, that were original just for the game. Like they've never appeared in the anime or movie. It's not recycled at all. So that was a really fun aspect of that, like the formation of the Akatsuki, like Naruto, Sasuke cooking Mangekyo Sharingan eggs for Sasuke. Like there's a lot of good stuff in that game, even though that was up until now the worst Storm game in my opinion. But connections aside, because this video is really about SoulCalibur, I don't want to see the same kind of thing happen where we're building up hype like SoulCalibur 7 is going to be like the epitome of SoulCaliburness. It's going to reach the height that it's never reached before. It's going to get all new fan base and everyone's going to be screaming from the rooftops how awesome SoulCalibur is and how much their souls still burn. I don't think that's going to be the case. SoulCalibur 6 was an application game, as I've explained many times before. Like, the series was canceled after 5, and it took a dedicated team led by executive producer Motohiro Okubo to just constantly bombard Bandai Namco with expectations for SoulCalibur, and they finally were greenlit to continue the series, and the goal was set for SoulCalibur 6 that they have to sell at least 1 million copies, which we know that they've passed that and whatever, so a sequel is definitely inbound, especially with the narrative set up the way that it is. But if we are expecting the best out of this, we're going to really let ourselves down. Like with SoulCalibur 6, a similar situation happened. I remember it was a huge gap between SoulCalibur 5 and SoulCalibur 6. A lot of people were talking about upcoming SoulCalibur 6 were talking about how Libra of Souls is the new Chronicles of the Sword, which in a way it is, and in other ways it's not. How this is going to be the best of the character creation when it actually took steps forward and steps back from 5. There was a lot of like test bed and recycled usage and stuff in this game that made other people feel let down. The thing I always hear the most is the narrative being told in just like text format and not even an audio voiceover. A lot of people say that that is extremely boring, and I tend to agree. There should be some kind of cinematic, even if it's in-game fights going on in the background with like a clearer drop and an audio voiceover. Anything better than just like sticking something on the screen and expecting people to sit there and read for 15 minutes before moving on. I do get that. But when it comes to what this game is going to be and what it's going to try to be, of course it's going to try to be better. Of course it's going to have a bigger budget than 6 based on the sales that 6 actually performed at. But that doesn't mean that it's going to be the best SoulCalibur game, and I don't think we should expect it to be the best SoulCalibur game. We should expect this to be the game that improves upon 6 and pushes more towards the future, because it's going to be very incremental in terms of what kind of upgrades they do. Hopefully they actually produce this in the latest Unreal Engine. I'm looking at you, Mortal Kombat. I don't know why you guys produce your game in Mortal Kombat. I mean, in Unreal Engine 4. Well, I do know why, but like we're not going to get into that because the MK fans will come gunning. But when it comes specifically to SoulCalibur and SoulCalibur 7 in general, our expectations need to be dampened a little bit. And I'm not saying they shouldn't be high. Like, we should still be super excited and pushing for all the things that we want to push for. But when it comes to like having a bunch of new characters from different places all around the world, that's not something that SoulCalibur usually does. They pretty much generally cover like Southeast Asia and Europe, and that's it. The exception to that being like Rock, but he's from Europe and then like went to like the New World, so I don't know if he might even be getting a new backstory. But generally speaking, like other fighting games do include everyone from all around the world. That's not really SoulCalibur's thing. They tell a tight-knit story that tries not to go too overboard most of the time, except for 5, like this, which is always the outlier. But when it comes down to it, our expectations need to be dampered just to not disappoint ourselves. I'm not saying so much that like we shouldn't expect these things from Project Soul and Bandai Namco. Of course we're paying money, we want to get the best product possible, But when it comes to character creation, expect some new item pieces and hopefully lessening the restrictions that were placed on them from 6. When it comes to story modes, I'm at least hoping for like voiceover work on top of the reading. That's the very least that I'm looking for. I want more CG cinematics, of course. I want more storytelling done in a different kind of way, even if it's like stylized, like comic panels or anything. Just something that actually makes us not fall asleep while we're playing the story. Beyond that, like more customization options for like the weapons themselves. Maybe not necessarily more character slots, because I think 100's pretty good, but giving us more options in terms of settings, in terms of frame rate, in terms of viewing frame data, a lot of things like that. Give us more online modes, more offline modes that actually coincide with those, like different kinds of things. Like I especially think that, I'm going to talk about this in another video, but I think that character creation mode should have its own, not ranked, but its own online mode. Like you should only be able to do that casually. I think ranked should be unspecified and as original as possible to the actual game. So that means the characters that are in the original story, except for boss characters, and no customization whatsoever. It should just be characters with their movesets fighting against each other. But I digress. It's just up to us to really show that we're not going to be one of those crazy, insane fan bases that like explain that we want everything in the next game, because most of us generally just want the series to continue. So whether or not like it's like the best SoulCalibur game, and I'm still going to hope that it is, but whether or not it is or isn't going to be based on anything other than that. I don't think SoulCalibur is going to go the way of microtransactions and stuff like that. They're not dumb enough to do that, because they know that the franchise would probably die if they did that. I'll talk about that in a future video as well. But right now, I just want to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. But before we finish the video, I want to actually talk about the last video's poll that we covered. And I actually talked about Naruto Storm Connections, and I said, which of the following best describes how you view Naruto X Boruto Ultimate Ninja Storm Connections? 53%, which is the overwhelming majority, said fun, but it needs more content. 10% said it's disappointing. 4% had the lowest majority, and they said that they hated it. And 33%, which is the second highest, said they're skipping the game entirely, which I totally understand. This is out of a pool of 120 votes. If you want to vote on the next poll, and the comments on the screen are from you guys, then it'll be in the community section right now. So you can go vote on that as soon as the video is live, and I'll cover it in the next video. With that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to a close. And as I always say, I love it, thank you,
and thank you.